So, I'm going to continue talking about unspeakable joy from letting go as I share this process. And, the roots of it started 30 years ago for me. So, at that point, um, I really felt like, there were just some basic minimums that need to show up in a relationship to be able to feel loved by somebody. Just basic minimums they should do for me. And nobody does those things all the time. So when I really got that I was at the mercy of somebody else's actions, somebody else's moods, somebody else's capability when I was down, I knew that just couldn't be my life. I had to somehow develop within me a sense of self love so powerful, so full, so complete, so persistent that I wouldn't be at that mercy anymore. And it started really with a lot of listening to songs. There's a great album called Songs for the Inner Child by Shana Knoll. Um, really lovely songs. Different ones would resonate with me at different times. I'd listen to those songs, sing with those songs, and just cry looking in the mirror. I think mirror work was so valuable for me because it's very easy to be so attached to our ideas. I found so attached to my ideas about, the hurts that I had received. But once I'm looking into my eyes in the mirror, there's an aliveness still there. Like I realized I wasn't hurt as much as I thought because that aliveness is still in my eyes. I look into my eyes and there's a natural love. It's how could I not love that being inside those eyes? And of course, there were moments when I was angry and ashamed of that being in those eyes, but it just couldn't last. I could say all the things that I wanted, all the ways I felt hurt, all the ways I felt disappointed, all the things I felt were falling short. And as I looked into those eyes, there was always, always aliveness. There was something resilient. I had to admit, in my eyes, there's a resilience. No matter how depressed I got. There was a time when I was so depressed, so hopeless, so desperate that I wanted to die. And my self-care, I dropped so low that I ended up in the hospital with less than a 50% chance of surviving. And then after I was in the hospital, the potential complications started happening one after the other and after the other. There was a time I had severe infection. I was bleeding internally, and every treatment that they could give me was something that was actually not tolerated by my system because it was so weakened that I couldn't handle even the minimum side effects that a treatment would have. Like they had to give up on me. And I had got myself into that condition because I had just been so desperately hopeless that like I said, I just dropped my self-care down. So yes, there are times when it has felt hopeless, but when I look into my eyes, well, there's something there. There's something that I love. And back then, that was the key to cultivating the self-love, looking into my eyes and listening to those songs for the inner child. And I'm not saying it was like a half hour, oh great, now I've got it. No, no, no. I'm talking every night, over and over, every night, going to sleep listening to those songs, letting them flood my brain all day long, looking in the mirror, crying and crying and looking in the mirror. but oh, it just so pays off. Now, looking into the mirror, rehashing the story of what is missing in my life, just starts to get old. What else is there to do? So I looked into the mirror and I said exactly what was it that I wanted to hear. I said I wanted to hear somebody say, "You're special," or "I'm proud of you," or "I love you," or "I understand you," whatever it is. I went through that list of what I wanted to hear and I said it to myself. And then I went through the list of, well, how do I want to be comforted? Do I want to feel somebody's pressure against my chest? Or do I want to feel hands holding, embracing, caressing me? And then I would do it. And of course, at first, didn't feel anything as good as somebody else doing it. But, I just persisted. I kept persisting till I loved to feel my hand caressing my cheek. The love that we're capable of is huge, huge. And and that nurturing is bottomless, fathomless. So it just became this ongoing practice, looking at my eyes, letting the tears flow, and asking myself, how do you want to feel? How do you want to be touched? What do you want to hear? And just bathing myself in that. And if it didn't even feel true, well, I can at least experiment with saying it. I can at least experiment with doing it, and just seeing, was there any seed of me, any seed that was just a little bit happier from that, a little bit more restored, a little bit more self-reliant? And that cultivating started to have me acknowledge that all these ideas I have weren't true. I had ideas that I needed respect, or I needed acknowledgement, I needed understanding, I needed appreciation. It turned out I didn't need any of that from someone else. Or, I had a minimum standard I needed of my home, I didn't need any of that. The comfort could come, the comfort is there already, waiting to be tapped into. And people have asked, what kinds of things did you go through? And yes, of course, I just described that time of deep depression and desperate hopelessness that extended on and off for a few years. Extreme physical pain, so agonizing that all I could do is just stay in this moment, in this moment, in this moment for a few days. It was just, I couldn't even come up with a story about it. How awful was this going to be? How long was it going to last? I didn't have the energy for any of those thoughts. I've been shamed in front of other people, where I was forced to get the person to stop. The situation ended up that I was groveling. First, I was just groveling enough to try to get them to stop, but that wasn't enough. I started panicking until I was totally groveling. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's all that helpful to hear all these things, but I just want you to know that whatever the experience is, it's worth testing to see if maybe it's not the bottom. Like there is support. It's not hopeless. There actually is still support. And an initial accessing of that is simply realizing our own preciousness that we see when we look into our eyes. So look into my eyes in the mirror, listening to songs for the inner child, or whatever songs feel supportive, that just accesses the knowing that it's love that we are, a love that can't be taken from us, and a love that turns out to be so sufficient, so overwhelmingly nurturing, and so available. So that's the first step that I spent many, many years in. And like I said, started for me around 30 years ago.